I am delighted to say James Skehill is with us to preview the All-Ireland Hurling Final. James, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi guys, how's it going?
Are you wrestling back and forth with what's going to happen this weekend? Are you trying to predict what Cork would do to topple Limerick? Or is this all about watching us consume the coronation of one of the all-time great sides this weekend? What's your thought process?
You know, it's a bit of everything, to be honest. I count myself like over methodical at times, so I'm trying to crunch all the numbers and see where the numbers lie. And every number I crunch, it lies in favour of Limerick, whether that be shot efficiency or concession rate or tackles or turnovers or possession. And I put all that and the numbers overwhelmingly favour Limerick. And then despite all that, I still can't call it because there's the thing called this Corkness, you know, which Cork people have to say. And when you get to a final, it really shows itself even more so than unusual. Like, what do I mean by that? It's like Cork people are different, you know, and I mean that in the most respectful manner. They're just different. So, like, they're a nostalgic bunch, you know. They're very sentimental in terms of their history, like, so they know they've 30 odd All-Irelands. So there's no fear at all from Cork going up towards to face Limerick, which other counties nowadays might see as a defeat waiting to happen, but not Cork. Cork are different, and I just think to have this thing ingrained in them as they have players, especially after the Kilkenny game, and now as a county, because they're seriously on the rise throughout both hurling and football. And I think there's a great confidence in Cork, and they're not going to fear Limerick whatsoever. And that's what makes it hard for me to call. I'm looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be a real shootout, if I'm honest, Jack, because you have two teams with real similar styles, one probably ahead of the other. So it's just going to be, I think, shoot on sight, and I don't think there'll be much defending.
Corkness is Christy Ring standing at the dressing room door in, I don't know if it was the first of the treble winning team in the 70s, where he's just saying we're Cork as they're all heading out the door, and that's what that team needed to get them over the line. It's completely intangible. It's not supposed to mean anything, but we all know that it does. Somewhere, if you scratch deep enough, it means something, particularly when there's a team like this which has old stars who are absolutely desperate to win their first All-Ireland, and a bunch of young players who, like the Mayo team at the weekend, don't have those scars from previous teams. Yeah,
you're right, and I just think, like, that's a huge thing to cling on to. You know, as a Cork player or a manager or a supporter, yes, you've got that in essentially your back pocket, and you can say that you can really kind of draw on that when things get tough. But I wouldn't. My only concern would be that for Cork is don't rely on it. You know, because, like, nobody deserves anything when they get to a final. Let's say you only deserve the trophy when you win it. So you're going up there thinking that, look, we deserve this after 16 years. You know, we haven't been in a final in 8 years. You know, we're doing so well at underage to say we're taking on Limerick and we deserve to win. That's a load of BS. Do you know what I mean? So that has to be put aside for the moment. So, like, what would often be said to some teams that I've involved with is that you have to have, like, fire in the belly but ice in the brain. You know what I mean? So you want to really go out pumped up, ready to rock, but be really, really ready to do your job and to go over, kind of reiterate everything you've done in the past couple of weeks and even the past couple of months, and then just bring it to fruition then on the day of the final. Because as you go forward more and you go through the championship and you get to the pinnacle, like, the margin for error decreases, and the responsibility to execute goes higher and higher. So, like, for example, if you look at the second quarter, you know, the Limerick and Waterford second quarter, and that was really where Limerick really blew out Waterford. And I went back over it again to see, like, what did they do, like, and they didn't actually do anything crazy. They were just extremely efficient, and they struck. What did they do? They struck 28 out of 31 hand passes on the run perfectly, and they struck 19 out of 22 stick passes to the hand under pressure. So that's an efficiency rate of like 90%. You know, so that's basically from the start up to the top. That's almost like no one laying a hand on the Limerick lads. That's just them getting the ball and moving it around and ended up in a score. So Cork are going to have to really try to shut that down, and then in reverse, Cork are going to have to do the same to Limerick. Cork plays a very similar style of possession retention. So their efficiency for hand pass and stick passing has got to be near perfect. And that's just what the final demands. That's the demands of the final. You like, a 7 out of 10 performance is not going to do for Cork. They're going to have to hit a 9 out of 10 performance to beat Limerick. Whereas Limerick are so strong and, like, so used to their game plan and have experience in finals now. Like a 7 or 8 out of 10 would nearly do Limerick at this stage, if you know what I mean. So the big test is for Cork is to remain cool and calm and execute under pressure.
That level of efficiency that you're talking about from Limerick's perspective, have we ever seen a team at that level before?
No, definitely not. No. I think in hurling, definitely not. Maybe in football, I suppose, which is more evident after the weekend. You can really look back on Dublin's efficiency over the last 6 years or 7 seasons, whatever, and see then the contrast that their inefficiency at the weekend against Mayo and say, right, that's what actually inefficient looks like versus what efficient looks like. So I think in comparison, probably the Dublin team, how they went about their business, how they controlled games, how they created a narrative in games, that's what they did, let's say, so well. Limerick are doing that. They're not going to do 5 or 6 in a row. I don't think that's possible in hurling. But they're definitely mirroring what Dublin have done, and it's admirable, to be honest. And like when you look through it, again, I'll go back to the second quarter. When you look through that second quarter, and it wasn't just a simple hand pass from me facing you. It's a hand pass or a stick pass on the run, in full motion, in full flight, under pressure, with a guy up your back or beside you. So to execute that under pressure, but that's a level that I wouldn't have seen in a hurling team ever. Even the great Kilkenny team, let's say with regards to efficiency, they were more power and strength than I suppose the efficiency of possession retention that Limerick have. That's the way the game has gone nowadays, and Limerick are the best at it at the moment. But like I said, Cork were really impressive against Kilkenny. There was a big test. I myself doubted them against Kilkenny at the beginning, the week before, and they stood the test, and they came through with flying colours. And that kind of mental test, and you've passed the test, will stand them hugely going forward.
It'd be a bit like trying to get Rocky Marciano versus Muhammad Ali, or Ali versus Peak Tyson, to see what would have happened if the legendary 4-in-a-row Kilkenny team, if you take their best ever performance and put that against the Limerick side, because they're completely different styles. It would have been like a knockout street brawl in terms of the outcome, and I don't know what would have happened. Like, the Kilkenny team is the greatest team that we've ever seen in hurling. They do the 4-in-a-row, certainly in the modern era. Mm-hmm. And yet, like, what would have happened if this Limerick side had been able to keep possession against them?
Yeah, I just think that evolution, of systems and teams will always win out. Like, so I have an uncle there at home here, and he keeps on to me every time I meet him, and I meet him probably twice a year, max, at any family occasions, and he would always tell me, the 88 Galway team would beat the 17 Galway team. And I'm saying, you must be on something. That's crazy.
Well,
you know what I mean?
So can I try and make his case for that? Like, let's assume that they have the same base of strength and conditioning that you guys have. Can we do that? And then
there you go. See, that's the difference. When you start introducing, let's say, unknowns, you start introducing, what ifs.
Well, Cyril and might not have been able to live with one of your corner forwards, but one of your corner forwards might not have been able to take the beating with the stick that Sylvie would have given him.
Yeah, I get you. Let's see, when you create this, he himself creates the argument and says that the 88 team on its standing versus 70 team on its standing, the 88 team would beat them. And I completely refute that. If the 88 team had the same exposure to training, were operating under the same rules, then I'd say it could be a finely balanced, competition. And the same argument could be made for Kilkenny and Limerick. I think evolution, where Limerick's system is at now, would beat Kilkenny back in the day. I think.
Look, and I buy that, because that's like saying that the Brazil 1970 team would automatically get beaten by Burnley today. I totally understand that the current Burnley team, with their strength and the weight programs that they've been on since they were 12, 13 and whatever other advantages they have. But like, let's assume that the Brazil 70 team gets access to everything that the Burnley lads have had. Their quality is of a level that they would clearly win that game. So What I wonder is the individuality of that Kilkenny team, which was backboned by some of the greatest individuals we've ever seen, versus the style. Would that have been able to counteract? And maybe it wouldn't. Maybe the.
I think definitely. I think it would, to be honest. Because when you use that word individuality, and you think that the players have gone through that Kilkenny team, you're talking. If you're picking 15 of the best players ever, in the history of the game now, ever, you're probably going to have 5 Kilkenny lads on that 15 of that team.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have Henry and Tommy, and JJ, and Jackie. And even, you're giving up arguments then for TJ at that time and for Owen Larkin. So Mike Finlay. So what you have is essentially 5 of the greatest players ever to play the game were invested in that team. And I think if we discuss this topic again in 5 years' time, I think the argument could be made, just with the way things are going and with the progression Limerick are making, the argument could be made that you could have 2 or 3 guys on the Limerick team who could be considered some of the best ever.
Yeah.
I.e. Keane Lynch, i.e. a Kyle Hayes type people, and they're awful young, and it's very difficult for you and I to discuss this and kind of make assumptions, that this is going to happen. But like, I think there's good, food in what you're saying with that argument. If you go into individuality, then it becomes a different case. But if you go current systems right now, Limerick win.
Yeah, sorry, I meant peak Richie Power. I think I would have had in there as opposed to Cha. I misspoke, but I totally buy that, and I think that's the bit where at the start of our conversation with Corkness gives us pause for thought. But actually, Limerick's greatness is not yet defined. Their ceiling, despite how amazing they've been, we don't know if we've seen peak Limerick yet. And the way that they've responded to any of the setbacks, the way they've responded to setbacks within games, suggests they're still evolving and mutating into whatever in retrospect we'll be able to pinpoint a match, because that was their perfection. That was their Kilkenny versus Waterford All-Ireland final. And that could come this weekend. It
could, like nobody knows the ceiling until they come down. So they're on the upward trajectory. And like, I have to say that Cork are with them as well. Like Cork, I said last week to her that Cork were probably, a year behind Limerick's system, maybe 18 months, because they probably introduced it at a later stage than Limerick did. But they're on the rise also, and so like Cork's ceiling is not yet known. So who knows what kind of performance they're going to produce on Sunday, as would Limerick, And I think it's very hard to, like, the game is so competitive, the count is so competitive that everything just keeps rising and rising, and so the level keeps going up. So when Limerick get to a level, it's up to everybody else to match and exceed that. And then when that happens, it's up to everybody else, and it keeps building. And that's how the evolution keeps happening. But the trouble is, Limerick have not yet reached their ceiling. They're a better team than they were in 18. They're a better team than they were in 19. They're a better team than they were in 20. Right now. So it's like, when is it going to stop? You know what I mean? And like, you look at Cork then, Cork were a far better team than they were in 18. So they've completely turned over their team. So from the 18 period, when they played Limerick in a semi-final, and only beaten after extra time, and probably should have won normal time, they've only got, I believe, 2 starts, which is Harnedy and Horgan on their first 15 at the moment. Whereas you go to the Limerick team, they have well over 10, 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Cork were in the midst of a kind of a semi-rebuild, and they're at that now, and they've introduced great people. You have to understand, Patrick Collins and Rob Downey, these guys only got their championship debuts this year. And look how influential the likes of Patrick Collins is on the team. Like, did anyone ever think Rob Downey was going to mark TG Reid over it? No, like I didn't. You know what I mean? And so that's just sort of a sign of youth that Cork have. So they're building now. And like, again, I use this term with Clare. And I think, and I would like to see Cork win their Ireland Sunday. I really would, because I would love to see Patrick Horgan win Ireland. I think it's a travesty for a person who's given so much to the game and has been so influential to so many people in clubs and elderly, etc., through his performances, they just get in Ireland. I often think of the likes of a Tony Brown or an Ollie Canning, or Damon Joyce, who didn't get in Ireland when they fully were entitled to one for all their efforts, And I just think, I do hope Cork win one for their sake. But I think, to my point as well, is that they're building more. And I think next year even you could see, and even, the bar will be raised by whoever wins the championship this year, and it'll keep growing, And I just think Cork have they've a plethora of youth, as we've seen, and they have the tangibles down there with people on the board level and the club level, that they can build something really good over the next, 12, 18 months. Really good and sustainable. Sustainable is the word.
That's it. I was going to say, the thing that really, I think, terrified particularly anybody who is in Leinster about Dublin over the last decade was what I would call the industrialisation of the process. They got all of their underage processes working, and they now have. So they're complaining a bit about the raw material of talent coming through isn't as strong as it was. Well, you've just had an all-time great slew of players, but there will be 55, 60, 70 intercounty standard players available to them who have been on conditioning programs from the time they were 13, 14 all the way through for the next number of years. So they're going to be grand. The thing about Cork was that over the last decade, we keep hearing about, they've got a team who wins Tony Forrestal and then comes the whole way through, and then they win it the next year, and then the under-16s are really good. And they don't win every game all the time, but they're competitive at every level at underage, and they seem to have a pathway that goes through UCC, and they seem to have finally understood exactly that we need to invest in these players, and eventually it's going to come through. We're starting to see that come through now, and it's not going to stop.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is starting to come through. I think they've changed their focus a small bit. You see, you can get overridden by playing the 21st, the playing the under-16s and playing the minors and wanting to win. We have to win, instead of trying to focus those kids, like, especially that's what they are. 14 and 16s are kids. You want to build them towards the future, to have a player or a person that can be, I suppose, put on a track or a trajectory that they can excel at 20s and excel at senior, and like obviously you've heard of the football club Corfin, and every time I look at them, their model looks like the same thing. They're under 14, 16, but when they get to 20s and under 20s and seniors, they're blitzing everyone. So like they have introduction of young guys that come through, like, pretty regularly. So I think their concern is not with winning under 14. Who cares? It's great at the time for the kids, great. But the major concern, and it takes a huge vision, because you can get distracted by short-term winning at underage levels, but it takes a huge vision from people at board level and to get everyone around you at a management level and to build something that is going to be successful for Cork in 5-6 years' time as opposed to the present. Because everyone wants to win now. Winning in the future doesn't sound great because it's not here, it's not the present. So you look back at the Limerick team when they brought in Anthony Daly and whatnot, you're going back a few years ago now. Think if you've seen these pictures of Kyle Hayes in these camps and Keane Lynch, and next thing we started hearing about these lads coming through, and before they got to 20, they blissed the 20, now they're senior stars, So I think Limerick did that, and I think Cork were in the process of it, and they're doing it really effectively.
So we should prepare ourselves, hopefully, for, there was that period of time where Kilkenny versus Tip was the best ticket in Irish sport. The stadium felt like it was literally rocking, and I hope that this is the start of a rivalry which defines both of these teams over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just hope, I know what Limerick are going to come with. Like, they've scored an average of 27 points in the last 4 or 5 visits to Croke Park East. So you know what they're going to hit. I want Cork to match them. I want Cork to front off them, but I want Cork to be Cork. I don't want Cork to alter their own game plan or alter their own team selection to try neutralise Limerick. I'd love to see Cork just go at them. And I think that's why I mentioned the Corkers at the start. I think they're just different. They're not going to kind of tailor their own game plan or tailor their own selection process in order to try neutralise Limerick. They're going to try to do so, tailor their own game plan and their own selection to try and attack Limerick. So, like when you see Callum Lyons switching wings to go over onto Hegarty, it kind of upset Callum Lyons, in my opinion, in the semi-final. So what I want to see is Cork is go at Limerick, play their game plan, stick to it, and see can you come out on top. Because that'll be the true test. If your game plan sticks or is ultra competitive against Limerick, then it's tried and tested and can be built upon. So I just want to see Cork go at it and go at it, let's say, on a technically, and execute as best they can and not rely on Corkness.
There's a bit of cuteness in Cork as well. The league game earlier in the year, we were really hoping that something big would happen, but Cork kind of decided, actually, you know what, we're not going to show you anything in this. We're not going to engage today. We're going to keep our powder dry and wait for later in the year. And at the time, it was really disappointing. Now I'm kind of glad, because it means that we don't have an expectation of what's going to happen, and there is that unknown. And I guess that was the whole point from Cork's perspective, is let's just put a little bit of doubt in John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk's mind, and they're going to have to wait till the first water break to make their changes.
Yeah. You just basically create a question, Joe. Create a question for Limerick. Like if Limerick have if they've seen the exam questions before the exam, don't make it too easy for them. So like if you track Cork's progression, let's say from that league game against Limerick and the league game against Galway after, whatever, and you go to the first round of the championship versus Limerick, and you go to where they were against Kilkenny, there's been a solid rise. I think you'd agree with me. And their players like Patrick Collins was championship debut was against Limerick. So it's not like he's been around for 10 years. So, and to see the way these players have grown over the last couple of months has been quite impressive. And again, I sat here and I spoke to you the week after the league game from Cork for Limerick, and we said we didn't know what was going on with Cork. We didn't know how they were executing. They had to bring on some of the big guns. But in hindsight now, and hindsight is easy, it was probably the right decision to start the team that did. And like, no one cares about a league game in Limerick. Everyone cares about the Championship of the Ireland final. So what Cork did and what they've introduced over the last couple of months and put in place with regards to, their systems, their energy, and even the hysteria around the team has been hugely impressive. And so they've grown massively over the last couple of months. And like you said, I think this could be the real start of a rivalry, because you look at Tipperary going to have to build, like with Sheedy departing and whatnot. Water are they've been taken care of by Limerick, twice, you could say. Yeah. And now it's up to Cork to try and carry the Munster mantle,
How much does the Munster Championship matter? It's like, it feels like it's a long time ago now.
To be honest, when you get to a final, I think my own belief is the Munster Championship matters very, very little. You can look back in that game and you can say there's a couple of moments or instances whereby Cork could have snuck ahead of Limerick. Like I think of the missed penalty, the Nicky Quaid save. I think of the Kyle Hayes run from 70, 80 yards. for the goal. I think of all the missed chances that Cork had in that 7-8 minute spell, let's say from 60 minutes onwards, to try and close the gap to Limerick to 3, and it just didn't happen. They were shooting from too far. And again, I just think that the Cork game that time wasn't as advanced as it is now. Like, there were still decisions being made by players in that game that I don't think you'll see on Sunday. I don't think you'll see Tim O'Mahony shooting from 90 yards under pressure, which he was doing against Limerick in the Munster Championship. I think you'll see him more efficient on Sunday, because again, you're going to have to play a certain system against Limerick. You're going to have to run at them. You know, they force you to shoot under pressure. That's why you see teams shooting a whole host of wides, because they're always shooting from 60, 70 yards under pressure because they can't get the ball in because they don't run. So Cork are going to have to run them. Attack, and try to have energy and support runners. That's why another topic as well, George, is Shane Kingston. Like, he has to start for me. Has to start. And you have to put legs in the half forward and take on that half back line. That's the key thing.
Right. So Kingston has to start because you can't afford to be coming from behind in this game.
No, you can't. Again, it's like when the great soccer teams get ahead, they just close shop, you know. And it's like Limerick now as well. When they get ahead, they have this excellent ability to close out the game, to manage the game a bit like Dublin footballers used to do, and kind of retain possession and keep tacking on scores. Like, they're not going to sit back and not score for 10 minutes. Like, they're going to keep tacking on the points. They're going to keep getting Seamus Flanagan on the ball. They're going to keep winning a couple of frees up front with Aaron Gillette popping them over. So I think Cork are going to have to put their most energy from numbers 5 to 12 and just run the socks off Limerick as best they can. You know, Hayes, Hannon and Burns aren't going to follow you around the place. They're not going to kind of trace you 50, 60 yards beyond their position. They're going to relatively stay zonal. So you're going to have to create numbers against them and create two-on-ones and get the Limerick backs going back towards their own goal. Like, every game this year, and especially the semi-final against Waterford, Limerick, like Nicky Quaid, had to make a couple of saves, had to make a couple of really good saves. If that was a different goalie, you're talking about a couple of goals. So there is a couple of goals to be got against Limerick. There is, for sure. And again, Cork proved that. They proved that in the league, and they proved that in the Munster Championship. And the likes of Jack O'Connor, he could be key to unlock that. Shane Kingston could be key to unlock that. Alan Cadigan, Robbie O'Flynn, I hope he's fit. You know, they have to run at Limerick and try to create goal opportunities. You're not going to beat Limerick on points alone. That is a fact. They are too efficient. They get too many shots off. They put you under too much pressure. So you need to get goals against them to win the game. So
if you've been crunching the numbers, do you have a scoreline in your head? It's Limerick 27 points.
Yeah, I have something crazy in my head. I think there's going to be over 55 points scored between the two teams at least on Sunday. Whether that be 220, to whatever. Like, I think there's going to be at least 55 scores. At least it's not going to be a 116 to 115 affair. You know, we're going to be looking at 27, 28 points per team. Hopefully, because again, the numbers will say that Limerick have scored 28 points in their last 5 visits to Croke Park on average. So that's kind of, you're saying to yourself, that's what they're going to come with, 28 points. So then Cork, but however, Limerick have also won their championship games by an average of 8 points this year. So it's like, right, can Cork get 20? And they will for sure. Cork have too much pace. They have excellent shooters. Henry can shoot from long. Flynn can shoot from long. Coleman, Fitzgibbon, Mahoney, all the guys can shoot from distance, to say, within a certain zone. So I think you're going to see a good plethora of scoring. I think if I was to call a score for you right now, I think it'd be Limerick 30 points, and I think Cork are going to hit 2 goals. I think around 220.
Okay, so a narrow win, but it sounds like classic, and hopefully the birth of a proper rivalry.
Yeah, I think so. Like, just go at it. Teams go at it.
You mentioned Tipperary there in passing. What do Tip need next to make sure that it's not a 2-team rivalry for the next 3 or 4 years?
Being Cahill. That's the need. They need him to come in. I think they need him to come in with his. He, by all means, from what I've been listening to down in Waterford, he's got a very how would you call it, no nonsense approach. So, like, he's certainly a very independent, strong manager. He'd probably bring back Mikey Bevins with him over from the Waterford setup. And I'd be hugely surprised if he stayed in Waterford. I'd be hugely surprised. The job is vacant from. Everything has lined up from the stars of aligned now. It's his time to take over the job. He's got his experience at under 21 level and got sufficient experience at senior level at Waterford. So it's time for him to move across. When he comes across, I do expect, as I said a couple of weeks ago, there will be a couple of panel changes, whether that be through forced or unforced remains to be seen. And I think he's going to try and enter those under 21 teams that he was successful over, the guys that won championships for him. I think he's going to try and introduce those at the senior level sooner rather than later, and commence a bit of a building project. All
right, James, great stuff. Enjoy the game this weekend. Thanks a million.
Okay, folks, thanks. Yeah.
Always great stuff with James Skehill here on OTB AM, and that is an interesting debate. the all-time great Kilkenny team versus this Limerick team. Who wins in a straight shootout? You can give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream or tweet us at Off The Ball AM